We are moving into the technical sessions, which are packed with practical exposures as we promised. None other than the first batsman or the first speaker is Dr. Jayaraman, a good friend of mine. And he's a graduate from Madras Veterinary College, has 30 years of experience in poultry industry, currently working as a freelance consultant for poultry in South Asia, Middle East. In his last assignment, he was heading technical services function of Kemin Industries, South Asia Private Limited. He has put in exposure in various areas like broiler breeder, broiler integration, parent layers, commercial layers, hatchery, projects, etc., etc. He has delivered many lectures on diseases and disease management. He has worked in various capacities in many companies like Komandla, Sarabai Zydus, Shanti Fortune, Hester Biosciences, Al Watania, Saudi Arabia, Kemin Industry, South Asia, name a few. A wonderful, simple gentleman, has put in a lot of expertise on vaccines and serology. He has been bestowed with an award called Best Veterinarian Service Award from Indian Poultry Journalist Award in 2016. 2006. He lives in Coimbatore, presently also joining from Coimbatore. So nice of you, because people want to know about immunity. These days, immunity is a buzzword because of Corona. Everybody is going and checking after 2 jabs whether my immunity is stronger to beat Corona. So now all over to Jayaraman to make us understand how simply the immunity is there for a poultry bird, which is jabbed with so many vaccines. We all know that vaccines, but we don't know how really the immunity comes, how really the protection happens for broilers, layers, and breeders. All over to Dr. Jayaraman to Coimbatore.
Thank you, Dr. Magesh. Good morning and very warm welcome to every one of you. I'll start sharing the screen. Dr. Vijay, is my screen visible and am I audible?
Very clear, Dr. Jayaraman, please.
Thank you. Very good morning to everyone. The subject, when I was asked to speak, is on immunity. I thought it's definitely need of the hour, and it's very much a needed one for this particular session. So the current scenario, as Dr. Magesh was mentioning, see, we might have given vaccines or something, but are we on to it? That's the big question. Sometimes producers will wonder. So my line of talk for the next 20 minutes or so is going to be like this. A little bit of the applied basics of immunity and how to devise an optimal vaccination schedule. Sometimes it failure. It goes, you might think that I've done a good job, but still vaccinations goes failure. Why is it so? And few tidbits or tips for the better immunization. And finally, a take-home message. If you look at, if you talk of immunity, so basically the power to keep yourself or the birds from being affected from the disease. That's what we define as an immunity. Okay, you have so many diseases, so you employ certain vaccinations or measures to control the preventing the birds getting sick from the bird. Fine. How is that we are doing it? By means of vaccination and by means of, to back up that, we are going to do sometimes immune modulations. Through nutrigenomics, we are going to help the bird or the animal to have a good immunity for that. Okay. What is the methods we are employing? We are employing live vaccines and killed vaccines to provide immunity. Okay. What is live vaccine? It's basically the first line of defense. It's just like a gatekeeper. When the disease enters, these vaccines will prevent or occupy the sites, receptor sites, so that it will not allow the disease organisms to get entered. This is what we call as a cellular immunity. So this provides a very robust CMI and to has later on humoral immunity. Okay, so coming to the second thing is we employ inactivated vaccines also. What is inactivated vaccines do? Once it has entered, it's trying to protect it. What we can call a kind of a fighting through the antibodies. Here, we call this as an humoral immunity. Cellular immunity is the one which live vaccines protects initially, and the killed vaccines, what it does, it gets into this. Once it gets into the system, it tries to protect. So this is a simple basic of the live vaccines and inactivated vaccines. Inactivated vaccines back up the live vaccine in production of the immunity, right? When you go to the basics, you will ask which is important. This is a very big question. You have to understand it. Some diseases, they are mostly protected by cellular immunity. For example, CAV, chicken anemia virus, and infectious laryngeal tracheitis. You should have a robust immunity, cellular immunity. That's why when you are going to give live vaccine, you have to understand it is the basic requirement because it is protected through the CMI. But some vaccines require both combinations, cell-mediated as well as humoral. For example, Newcastle disease. So you should understand the disease. You should understand how the vaccine works. Then you will know, okay, my schedule is going to protect it. All right. If you ask me which is better, whether live vaccine is better or killed vaccine is better, it depends upon the situation. There is no single answer for this one. Sometimes people will say, sir, I'm not using any live vaccines at all, but I'm employing only the inactivated vaccine. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So you may have to understand the situation. You have to understand the need of the web, and accordingly you have to employ. For example, if you're having a bronchitis virus, then there is going to be having outbreak of it. Only the humoral immunity through which inactivated vaccines will not protect the world. To keep it up to a level, sometimes you may be employing live vaccines. By doing so, you will be having the prevention of the infection and also backing up through the humoral immunity. So the question to that is, depending upon the situation and the nature of the disease, you have to employ the vaccinations. All right. This picture, sometimes people will wonder why this has come into this immunity subject. When we talk of an immunity, we always think of thymus, we always think of bursa as a immune organs, but we many times miss this intestine. Assuming you are having applying vaccine, for example, respiratory replicative vaccines like Newcastle disease, where it goes, first it goes to the intestine and replicates, then it comes to the respiratory tract. So if your intestine is not going to be healthy, the immunity development will not be robust. So the same way the Rio vaccine as well. So when we are having not a good intestinal health, some of the vaccines will not work well. So it's very important to keep the intestine as well, because intestine contains, it has the biggest, longest galt, the gut associated lymphoid tissue. This is what is present in the intestine. So it's very important and critical that you have should have good intestinal health as well as for immunity. Okay, sometimes you have to understand the vaccine and the nature of the technicality of the vaccine as well before applying the vaccinations. Sometimes in the recent times, some of the occasions, the people used to ask me, sir, I'm having the live vaccine for the H5, of course, it's an off-label, but can we do that? But you have to understand one thing. If we are going to apply that vectored vaccine, direct vectored vaccines in the second time, not in the second time at your farm level, it will not technically work. The reason is the production companies like big Venkateshwara or Skylark or whomever maybe, when they are going to employ the vaccinations of Merck vaccine at the first dose, after you receive at the farm level, when you are going to use these kind of vaccines, it will not work because it has been already occupied by the previous vaccine. So this is a technical thing people will not understand properly and will try to say, sir, whether this will. So you have to understand the vaccine properly, how this works. The same thing applies to the fowlpox vaccine as well. Sometimes you are using fowlpox vector plus MG vaccine, maybe at 5th or 6th week of age. They would miss sometimes to notice it. If they come and ask, sir, the vaccine is not working. We have observed sometimes they have employed the pigeon pox vaccines earlier. So when these kind of situations, the second time, the same vector, when it is employed, it will not work properly. So you should know in principle how the vaccine is working. So it's very critical to understand the vaccine. Coming to the second thing, you should know how to devise an optimal vaccination schedule. We have to draw a list, what is the diseases in our area. Sometimes we tend to go by general list. It may not be required because some particular provinces or states, they don't have particular bacterial diseases. You need not go. You should have a basic idea what it is required. Choose the vaccines available among them, what you can employ. You can readjust the vaccination schedule. For example, sometimes you have variant IB vaccinations at the 3rd week of age, generally, for example, 4/91. But if your farm experiences nephropathic IB in the 2nd week itself, you should readjust your vaccination schedule to the 1st week so that you don't get hit by the variant diseases. So you should readjust the vaccination schedule as per the requirement. Third one is that you should know how to draw a baseline. This baseline is very, very important because the baseline is the one which will give you a clue at times of immune suppression. And second, last one is you have to monitor the trend line. Trend line is very, very critical. We look at the immunity in piecemeal. It is not that way you should look at it. You should look at it in a piecemeal. Okay, this is what my disease vaccine schedules. And if you are not going to dip further, you should try to intervene. So for that, the trend line is a very critical. So with this, I would like to go to the next line. Okay, coming to the vaccine failures. Vaccine, people will tell, sir, I am vaccinated, I got a disease outbreak. Please be aware, vaccination is not equal to immunization. People sometimes mistook vaccination is equal to immunization. No. Vaccination means it's a physical application of a vaccine. If the birds are not in good state of health, it will not be immunized. So this is a very different between vaccination and immunization. I will show. You have to understand sometimes for the failures. For example, when you are applying day-old vaccine at a spray, for example, ND plus IB vaccines, you will have severe respiratory complication, or what we call is a post-vaccination reaction. Is it a vaccine failure? No. Sometimes if you are having mycoplasma in the parents, day one vaccine will complicate the disease and efficacy of the vaccine. Similarly, when you are applied IBH vaccine at the day one also, sometimes you find adenoviruses in the commercial. Why is that? Because the birds are immune suppressed. Sometimes if you look at it, CAV would be there. So similar with IBD, when you are looking at the vaccine failures, you should be able to analyze the underlying factors. What we see is different. What actually caused is different. So you have to analyze always, rather than saying, sir, vaccine has not worked. All right. Another thing is immune suppression. If you are got in immune suppressed birds, you will not have a good take. It will be mycotoxin, it will be chemical toxins or pesticide toxins, or sometimes the chicken anemia virus or heat stress. These conditions, you will tend to have a problem with a proper take, or what I call is a vaccine take. So this is a very critical when we are going to analyze the vaccine take. You should also consider vaccine reasons for vaccine failure. One of that is immune suppression. And immune suppression, you have a big list. I have just sorted out few things. You should one by one analyze it and try to take it out. Right. If you look at, for example, broiler breeder or layers sometimes, specifically if I am talking on the broiler breeders, you would find a big list of the schedule. If you type it in one sheet, A4 sheet, it will not hold it. It will go to the next sheet because it will have 34 lines. Next sheet will have another 13, 15 lines will be there. So imagine every week, sometimes one time, sometimes you are applying 2 times vaccines. Look at it. You will say, I have administered vaccine. You look at this perspective. In this picture, I put somebody is sitting there and so many people are trying to ask or something like that. Imagine a situation in your house and hundreds of guests are coming. It would be difficult for you to attend everybody at each same respect and the time you want to do. It will not be possible. The same way, when you are going to give so many vaccination at shorter period, the bird will not be able to respond and produce the required antibodies. So it kind of causes a paralysis of these things. So you don't get a proper take. So spacing out vaccine is very critical to develop good immunity. Next thing is draw your baseline. As I mentioned, if your parents are affected, you would find that the bottom line of your titer saying it is protective. There would be a range. For example, 3,000 to 6,000 is the ELISA titer for CAV is protective. You would say, or IB it is protective, you would be happy. But if you look at it, the past the lines would be around 8,000 to 9,000. But in this present scenario, it is only 3,000 to 4,000. This is an alarm. And even though titer will say it is protective, but they are not really protective. So you have to draw your own baseline to arrive at that, these things. Coming to these things, long interval between vaccines is not ideal. Monitor the trend and you should see it doesn't fall below the threshold line. Careful while scheduling the vaccines. For example, people are sometimes giving very close vaccinations after the debeaking. The birds would be at a stress. It would not have a good intake. So you have to take a good this thing. Second one is a protein. Sometimes in commercial layers, you might observe, sir, I want to give my protein just to keep the egg size. I'm not getting premium. This protein enough for my bird. But please aware that frogs more frequently you will get outbreak with diseases. Reason is protein is also important for building the immunity. Second thing, maternal antibodies. Nowadays, this is used as a tool to help the chicks to bring out good amount of immunity. So understanding it is a very, very critical, right? If you look at the maternal transfers, some of them are having very low, for example, encephalomyelitis at 6 to 7%. But if you are looking at the mycoplasma, they are 30 to 33%. But even though if the AE, its transfers are very low, still it gives a good protection. But even though mycoplasma is having 30 plus, it will not help in protecting the day-old chick, because mycoplasmas are mostly cell-mediated immunity. In that situations, the maternal transfer does not help you greatly. So when you are going to look at it, you are going to look at it in per total per se. Some of them are completely protective. For example, CAV titers are very good protective. But at the same time, as I mentioned, if you are looking at IBH, it transfers that, but it doesn't protect because they are serotype specific. So you have to understand in total what is the transfer, whether it is be helpful or not. Immune modulation is another good thing. Do not employ again and again only the vaccinations. Employ immunomodulatory methods like vitamin E, C, selenium, chromium, everything, phytochemicals, prebiotics. It helps the greater extent. That's one good method which has come recently. While scheduling, please consider the variants as well. Do not consider only the standard vaccine. Care has to be taken. You might say, sir, I have done vaccination schedule. It is not working. It will not work sometimes unless you include the variants as well. This molting is another thing which has been due to stress or no market prices they are doing. After molting, you should try to consider and employ same amount of vaccination schedules. Tighter interpretation is very critical. You should take up, try to do it. This is a very good tool to take you to the next level. Each disease has its own vagaries and understanding. You should not only look at GMT, sometimes positive percentages, for example, in CAV is very, very critical. The take-home message is you have to understand the scheduling and you have to understand how to maintain that good titer by employing other means. Latest technologies are very good boon, no doubt, but do not give thrust on only the technology, but understand the health status of that, and then finally take care. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.